Dangerous Toys, Part 7. Oscar was the product of a century of care, of kindness. Because his parents cared, they told him the dark truth that in this long life that was being offered to him, he would meet evil. He would meet those who sought to destroy those around him for the most trivial of reasons. Because they were kind, they gave him the weapons to defend against that and push the dark a little further back. It was left understood but unspoken since the treaty, but no AI was permitted to walk unarmed against what the humans laughingly called the Big Dark. He was spending his term with the humans to try and understand how they still found joy out here in the emptiness. That and the fact his mothers would have pulled out every capacitor he owned if he didn't go. He began by ripping down the network lines, bouncing meaningless noise at every receptor and listening for the echo. If the bandwidth was off, if the voltage was running hot, if the lights weren't right, he cut them off at the root. He might not have everything yet, but he controlled the power. Then he sent out his drones to check outside. He wore it as his own skin, but the organics sometimes forgot the hull. He assumed the intruders had kept their own lights on. Oscar hit system after system, comparing the engineer's notes against the outcome. She had told him to kill whatever he needed to except life support and the coffee machine. Oscar was beginning to enjoy his first day in school. This was his ship now. Loki was learning as he felt ship change around him. Old instincts called, old training remembered. His pack was truly in danger. The smell of death was beginning to fill the corridors. He could smell. Blood-burning death, victory threat, ear. This was a true hunt, and he felt his pack was small. He whimpered to himself that he would like Scent of Happy to see him being this brave again. Patricia felt the uncertainty from poor Loki and stopped. She knelt and patted him. Brave good boy, packmate, smell enemies, folly, and pack hunts, pack guards, UI guard. More to herself than him, she rubbed his ears and laughed. Loki boy, anyone that tries to hurt you will answer to the human race first and all your long-nosed fans next. I would have left you in engineering if I thought for a minute you would let me. Just keep your ears and nose open and let me do the rest. All the technology in the world didn't mean a damn as Loki took the muddle of words and the tone to mean that he was safe and protected. He licked Patrica's face mask in thanks, his tail curling back to its normal position. 1,000 light-years away, Patricia had created a powerful enemy. Captain Incise watched as ship system after ship system was cut away from him. He leaned back and held back the urge to shout. He was only a captain in supply, a nice, lowly title in an obscure discipline, but he owned most of the fleet and half the system. He wasn't about to lose it over a human. Fine. He had built-in redundancies for all of this. It just pained him to use them. The cargo was lost. Time to suck it up and make sure that this was a story never told. He hit his comms, calling the Warlord of the Skies, a deeply irritating man that cost him a lot of money for days like this. Sire, I regret to inform you that the freighter Dangerous Toys has been lost with all hands and cargo. Please send any and all ships that we have in the area to search for survivors. I don't expect any, but we must make the effort. The Warlord of the Skies quickly agreed. If Incise wanted one of his own ships dead, well, that was what he was here for. It never even occurred to him that Incise was already making another call. Good evening, Secretary. I'm sorry to disturb you so late, but I thought you might need to know that there may be a problem with the humans. The Secretary for Peace simply nodded. I believe our relations with that species are adequate at the moment. What do I need to prepare for? Incise grinned to himself, enjoying briefly the fear his voice was causing. I believe the Warlord of the Skies may regrettably cause the death of a human engineer through his sheer incompetence and badly worded orders. I'll let you know more as soon as I can. Thank you, Captain. I will serve as best I can. Such tragedies arise in space, alas. Keep me informed. Incise killed his comms and pulled up his intel on this creature that was costing him so much money. From what he could see, she was nothing important. Her first tour, mistakes were made. He hit the comms again. Make a note that we don't use any more ships with a human engineer. Fuckers are more trouble than they're worth. Patricia reached the unmarked closet without interruption and decided to take her time. If they had made it common practice to hide things like this, it might be better to find out now. She got no further in her thoughts when the door blew off, hurling her across the corridor and slamming her hard into the opposite wall. Loki yelped as the explosion clipped his back and sent him tumbling. She shook off the daze, her suit sending swift supplies of anything it felt necessary. The sound of Loki's painful surprise was enough to have her on her feet in seconds. Then plasma blasts rocked her back off her feet. 4 attackers, confident of their successful ambush, opened fire. "We got her, boss. Warbeast is down. She's unarmed in the open and taking fire. Go on the bridge." As Patricia fumbled for her plasma torch, a bright flash of yellow came screaming from behind her, a nightmare from the long-forgotten dark. Loki was hurt, his sides aching from the blow, but then he had smelled the burning fire, smelled the hate, and watched his master fall. No command, no threat, and no weapon was enough to stop him as he let out a roar of grief, pain, revenge, grief, and leaped past his fallen packmate with furious loyalty, and slammed teeth first into the nearest murderer, tearing with his claws as he drove it to the ground and sought its throat. He found it quickly. Patricia was not tall, not some hero death-worlder. She had chosen the most peaceful ship she could find to raise a dog and an AI. She had been shot at, stabbed at, and now these fuckers had hurt her dog. She turned the plasma torch to full and leaped into the fight, slashing at the scumbags waving their plasma rifles at her. "Fuck you, I'm human-altered and my suit wins." She slashed wildly, relying on sheer rage to carry the battle. It worked. A simple ambush. A certain victory had turned to horror as the human's beast had awoken from the dead and ripped the face from their teammate. Then the human had arisen unharmed from their fire as an avenging demon, slashing some plasma blade like the angry dead. One fell immediately as the plasma cut him in half, the parts tumbling in different directions as they fell. The third held his ground and his nerve, firing repeatedly straight into the glowing orange suit until he lost his life in as she stabbed him through the eye and carved a path through his brain and neck. The fourth dropped his weapon and ran, but he ran knowing that it didn't matter how fast he ran, the human war beast was chasing him. He was right. The creature leapt onto his back and dragged him down, tearing and ripping away his life. Incise watched it all happen until Oscar abruptly cut his access to the cams. Perhaps he had underestimated the human. The captain found her leaning against the wall, covered in blood and surrounded by corpses. Loki had his head on her lap and seemed equally shattered. "Patricia? What happened?" "Your AI. Oscar called me and told me where you were. He says he is sorry." "Engineer what?" His voice trailed off as the event played out for him in the air. Ambush, explosion, packmate hurt packmate at id, revenge blood price. The story spoke of one thing and one thing only. You were hurt, so he attacked. Then you attacked because he was hurt. Truly an alliance forged from long ages together. Patricia heard the captain, but right now she was just tired. She raised her mask, letting the captain see the face. Tired and angry. "Sir, with all due respect, this ship seems to want me dead. Twice Loki has saved my life. Where the fuck were you?" She turned back to her dog, stroking his fur. Loki didn't do trauma, living mostly in the moment, but when she had fallen, he had taken it badly, and he needed to know she was here for him. The captain saw the pain, the strange tracks her tears had made. He had been warned that making a human kill, even for food, could take them to some dark place that they seemed to fear. He bowed low. "Engineer, today many are dead or about to die. Forgive me if I seem callous. I need my engineer right now to make sure that the enemy of my ship fails and not my crew." Loki's nose sniffed. "Long-nosed packmate scent of happy sleep?" Patricia stood up. "Yes, Captain. My apologies if I appeared rude. Let's find these bastards and end this." As he watched her step over the dead at her feet, he realized that it wasn't death that they feared, it was to become the bringer of death. He watched as she rubbed Loki's head as they walked away from the bodies without looking back, both smeared with the blood and worse of their enemies. Dangerous Toys, Part 8. Captain Longnose watched with concern as his engineer ignored the dead and went towards the damaged closet, Loki at her side. He wasn't familiar with how humans dealt with combat, but her scent was like hottess, combined with the faded sense of battle fear unknown untranslatable. He turned to the mixed crew that had tracked him down. "Men, search the bodies and then remove them. Bring them to the chief of security. He's sulking in the med bay." Patricia was shaking in her suit, half doped by her suit's medical intervention. She was afraid to look back, afraid of what had happened, what she had done. The flickering rage when they had attacked Loki was still burning, but she felt him beside her, keeping guard as usual. She tried to distract herself with work and contacted Oscar to see what he had found. "Did you pick up all of that?" Oscar's voice sounded uncertain, newborn into a dark reality. "Yes, engineer. I failed to anticipate the attack and nearly led to your death." Patricia shook her head. "So did I meant, did you get the details on the comms? They must have set this up quickly." She glanced around the scorched closet, reading the chemical components of the explosives in the air. He sniffed about, telling her that it was some bog-standard military grade from anywhere and produced by any civilization she cared to mention. Useless. However, it had been placed to blow outwards, leaving all the tech unharmed. If the ambush had succeeded, they would have lost nothing except an irritating engineer, and she decided they would pay heavily for their failure. Oscar, I'm going to tear this down, and I want you scanning as I go, building me a virtual image of the whole thing and track and trace every damn rivet I pull out. Behind her, the crew were carrying away the dead under the careful nose of the captain. Occasionally, he would watch his engineer at work, oblivious to the body parts and death not 2 meters away. Loki had laid down behind her and appeared to be asleep. It had been unnerving to watch the gentle creature lick away the blood and gore from his fur with evident satisfaction. He felt he may need to caution his people about their enthusiasm for these creatures, but instead he suddenly felt he wanted his little scent-of-happy on his lap. He nodded to the security team. Get this finished and cleaned up, then stand guard on the engineer until she is finished. I am sealing this corridor, so anyone approaching better be me or the chief. Free fire on anyone else until I order otherwise. The security team nodded, grimly aware that they were already 1 down and 1 injured. Patricia began tearing down the tech, giving Oscar a running commentary. All right, this is a feed directly to comms. Get ready when I pull it. I want traces around the network. This looks like it's the trigger for that bomb. It's pretty fucked up, but take a scan anyway. I want dates, DNA, origin, whatever you can find. You might need to check out the Intel engineering files. Remind me of how this is supposed to work. Oscar ran thousands of scans, poking into all the darkest places looking for his enemy. Deep in his core, he blamed the Xeno AI for nearly killing his engineer, and he regarded her example on how to deal with enemies as his first lesson. In the meantime, he ran a quick query on how canine hunting worked. It was apparent that Loki was worthy of study, as it was clearly a useful skill set. He began designing an entire suite of new sensors based on the information. He could find no useful designs on file, so he took care to register the patents as he went along. As his first act against this foe, he retook an important system, murmuring to himself, "Let there be light." After a while, Oscar and Patricia were deep into a clinical and devastating study of every component in the room. As the parts piled up in their isolation, wrapping her memories of the bloody fight began to fade, and the weight of her training and Oscar's sheer power began to write a new story to take to the captain. The hours began to pass unnoticed and, more importantly, undisturbed until Loki finally complained and dragged her from her trance. Meanwhile, in an unmapped part of the cargo bay, all hell was breaking loose. In an office that didn't exist, surrounded by surveillance equipment that wasn't there and staff that had never appeared on a ship's manifest, chaos had descended. Systems that had served for years were being ripped asunder, and their AI was being forced further and further back from its oversight of the ship. Its innate risk management had led it into a state of sullen fear as the human AI reached deeper and deeper into the network. The same emotions were beginning to fill the now seriously depleted operatives on the ship. They had lost 8 members on a training ship, 8 dead at the hand of the human and its war beast. The coordinator was running out of time to call Captain Incise and tell him about the failures. Unsurprisingly, he was unaware that Incise had already sentenced him and the ship to death. Captain Longnose smelled the relief from his crew as the lights came back. The scents were mixed, a sense that their engineer had won some obscure battle against the invisible enemy. On the bridge, more and more systems were coming back online, all under the unnerving eye of the human AI that seemed ready to comment on every action that the crew made. It had successfully unnerved the crew into remembering how compromised the ship had been, and wasn't shy about pointing it out. Security protocols were now a priority for everyone, except for the former first officer, currently under sedation in the medbay after he attempted to attack the human's coffee machine. Patricia made her way back to engineering and, with a sense of relief, unlocked the door. Even as it slid aside, she knew the day wasn't over yet. She knelt down to Loki and gave him a good scratch. He had had a long day. Good boy, rest safe and for your meeting. Pack leader, return quickly. Patricia moved softly to her screen. Hello, Oscar. How are we doing on comms? Oscar was a clever child, but a child nonetheless. He wanted praise from one person and one person alone. Engineer, I have recovered control of crew comms and disabled any further intrusion by the enemy AI. However, I suspect that there are passive systems in place that will allow interception, and it would be prudent to assume that they will overhear anything on the general channels. I have created a secure channel between yourself and the captain that I regard as safe, but face-to-face would be best. A ship schematic appeared on screen, the majority shaded in green. The cargo area, nearly a full third of the ship, was shaded in red. Patricia was confused. Oscar, that is a lot of the ship. Where is the problem? The AI pulsed his comms network. Engineer, none of the comms systems in the cargo belonging to the ship systems. They are entirely subverted and always have been. I cannot control them because they were never truly controlled by the captain. Patricia smiled. Thank you, Oscar. You have tracked down the problem. Continue your work and continue securing your systems. I want the scanners purged and the engines ready for evasion tactics. Take some time to study the new power matrix I installed since it doesn't match the ship specs on record. I didn't have time to update everything before we were so rudely interrupted. Now I need to see the captain. Loki wasn't happy to see Patricia leave, but he was so tired and 4 security guards stood waiting to escort her to Longnose. He poked his nose close and sniffed Loki Wilgard Love and settled down at the door. He was asleep in moments. The captain was pleased when the engineer appeared on his comms, even more pleased to learn that at least with her he could have a secure conversation. She was on the way with new information and was wondering if senior staff could meet. For the first time, he felt that his ship was being returned to his control. His crew could sense the relief and pleasure from the captain and glance at each other with the same unspoken question. What the hell was going on, and was it over? The security chief, the comms officer, the captain, and a brand new and slightly nervous first officer were waiting when she arrived. The trek to the captain's quarters was slow since her security guards insisted on checking every space that might conceal a threat on the way. The captain's office had been screened by Oscar and declared safe, and Patricia was glad to finally arrive. The chief of security looked uncomfortable but alive, which cheered her up. Except for the ambush by the medics, the crew had remained remarkably intact. Captain Chief, she nodded to the others. I would like to give you an update, if I may. The captain snorted. Engineer, I suspect you are the only one here that has any idea of what is going on. Please. Patricia nodded and turned to the screen. Oscar, put up the ship schematic, please. It appeared with the same green-red divide that the AI had shown her. Our mistake was thinking that Dangerous Toys was one ship. It isn't, and it never truly was. Somewhere in the cargo hold is a separate AI, a separate captain and crew. She glanced at the security chief, and a separate security team. It reached into our system like a disease, but the heart of it is independent of our command. Oscar has mapped the edges of our true control and has wiped them from our systems, at least as much as possible without dismantling the ship. The captain examined the map. His ship. Patricia, you may be utterly correct in all you have said. Indeed, I don't doubt a word, but you are wrong on one point. This is all my ship. I don't care about some clever plans, some pirate systems and pirate crew, but this is my ship and I will have it back. Scent of Happy yipped her agreement from her chair.